Namaste everyone, Ram here, DNA Hacker. Hope you're having a beautiful day wherever you may be. As usual, please subscribe. If you have not done so already, hit the notification button so you can know when we upload new videos. I'm starting a short little series here of how to develop an early morning spiritual practice, particularly emphasizing yoga. And I'm going to start this first session on what is meditation. And you may be saying, oh yeah, I know what meditation is, but you'll be surprised. I would say probably at least 90% of the people who practice meditation are actually not meditating, if not more. The number is probably higher than that. So I'm going to explain first what is meditation so that you understand what is the goal or what should be the goal of meditation, because that early morning practice without true meditation is not as effective. So what you want is to actually develop a practice that leads you to that not end point, but to that goal. And of course, if you learn a little bit about the science and philosophy of yoga, you're going to see that meditation is not an early limb, it's actually a much later one. And it's really a transpersonal developmental process that an individual will go through that I describe in my upcoming book, Voyage from Human to God. If you want to be a part of the book launch team and receive an advanced reader copy, please comment below or reach out to me on social media at Rama's Rooted Tree. And so in this book, I describe the limbs of yoga, starting from the ethics, from the yama and niyamas, going through the body, asana, which is something that you're familiar with. It's very easy to start with the body. The problem is that we find, especially in the West, that a lot of people stay at this level. They don't really progress beyond the body because they are trapped in the body. Their idea that they are the body is what keeps them limited and trapped. It keeps their consciousness contracted and condensed at the level of the body and at the level of the senses. To overcome the body and the senses, then you actually have to push forward and push deeper. And so the more advanced limbs of yoga, going from pranayama, which is really not about breath, even though it uses the breath, eventually you go beyond the breath, and the breath is not necessarily needed anymore. You can, with concentration, start to draw energy in a specific way that I can teach you if you're interested, but you'd have to go down below and book a coaching session, and we can discuss more where you are and how we can get you to that point. And so we'll talk about pranayama shortly. And of course, as long as I remain imprisoned thinking that what I receive from the senses or what the senses create in a mirror, I look at a mirror, I think that that's me, I identify myself with that image, then the body will continue to be an obstacle, and I'll explain how senses are an obstacle to the practice of meditation and how you can actually overcome that limitation. But of course, ultimately, what we're doing is an overall covering of this. You have to actually go deeper. I suggest you get my book, Voyage from Human to God. Sign up to get an advanced reader copy and be part of the book launch team. It's an amazing book. There's nothing like it. You will really learn how to go from being a human to being a God, and how to express it in the now, and how to share it with the world, how to become that flower that blossoms and is able to offer its nectar to those around it. If you do not offer that nectar, if you do not blossom and offer the nectar, you're not fulfilling your life's mission. There is a greater purpose to you. And of course, I think this is the key with meditation. So I would say probably at least 90% of the people, even so-called experts, that say that they are practicing meditation, what they're likely practicing is concentration. They are trying to tame the mind. They are trying to learn how to focus, how to build the power so that they can actually concentrate for longer periods of time, longer stretches. It doesn't matter if the concentration is something in space, whether it's outside of me or whether I have my eyes closed and I'm concentrating on somewhere in the internal space. I visualize something in front of me, let's say a circle, and I'm trying to have a focal point where I'm trying to concentrate on. But what happens is, this could also be, I'm focusing on my breath. Where I'm focusing somewhere in space, in my nostrils, I'm observing the breath coming in and out, in and out. And so this could also be measured in two ways. So I'm trying to have a focal point, and I'm going to create a space around that focal point that I do not want my attention to drift away from. What you're going to find is that it's going to be very difficult to keep your attention on that focal point, whether it's the tip of a candle, the tip of my nose, the space between my eyebrows with my eyes closed, the breath coming in and out. No matter what I'm trying to do, it's going to be very difficult because more than likely, you may not know this, you likely have attention deficit. Most people have it in some range or another, and that has been growing due to this increased, the society with increased stimuli, with very engaging stimuli, whether it's on the TV, an action movie, let's say, or very loud stimulated music, or you go to stores and there's stimuli everywhere, video games, telephone, and with apps and stuff like that. So what it's doing, we are actually encouraging our attention to become smaller and smaller and smaller, and unable to hold attention in a specific point. No wonder you have children that go to a classroom now, and in the classroom is the teacher is speaking with a very monotonous tone. They're very boring, and all of a sudden my attention span is being lost. Somebody may not even be listening to this because their attention span is too small. They're unable to engage valuable content unless they're kept engaged. And so marketers have to work really hard at catching your attention. And so I'm trying really, really hard to concentrate. However, I'm unable to do so because I keep drifting off. I go off into la la land. Thoughts take me this way, thoughts take me that way. All of a sudden I realize, holy crap, I'm not supposed to be over here. Let me get back to the focal point. Let me get back to the breath, to focusing on the space in between your eyebrows, to a space in front of me, whatever that may be with my eyes closed. I'm focusing on something. I'm trying to keep my attention in that circle. Maybe observing something outside of me with my eyes open. It doesn't matter what it is. At the beginning, the area around that focal point is going to be very large. So there will be two things that I'll be measuring: space and/or time. So how big is the space around my focal point? Is it very large? Do I have a tendency to drift off far? Or am I keeping my mind on a short leash and I'm drawing it back to the focal point? So again, drawing it back to the focal point without judgments, without harsh criticisms. You're not there to attack yourself. You're there to love, honor, and respect yourself. If you drift off, it is absolutely normal and fine. You're training towards concentration. Most people will call that meditation. They may introspect, they may sit down and think about their problems and think about this or that and call that meditation. That's not really meditation, that's more introspection. They're just kind of visualizing. That's a very good exercise. I recommend that often to my clients because they need to start observing what they're doing on a day-to-day basis that's actually limiting them. So eventually, this space around the focal point starts to become smaller and smaller and smaller until the individual is able to maintain their attention on a singular point the size of the tip of a needle. And it will not stray away from that little teeny tiny point unless it is willed to do so. So thoughts don't invade randomly. you've actually become a perfectly tuned vehicle. You're not going this way like a radio. Somebody's not turning the knob to this station or that one, to a noisy in between stations, to noise, to a station back here. That's how our brain works, our mind works. It's like a radio. It can tune into this frequency or that. More often you think thoughts are yours and they're not. You attach to them, you think they're you, and the problem lies that you then allow them to take you off on a journey. So what we want to do is to start gaining control and not allowing the mind to be fickle. The mind wants to be lazy, it wants to be entertained with Netflix and other idle activities, it wants to gossip, talk ill about others. And so what we want to do is start to discipline the mind and curb it. The practice of concentration will allow you to do that. As a plane is going by. And so then eventually, and I should get to time. So another way in which you could measure the space is through time. Maybe I'm observing my breath and I'm measuring the amount of time or times that my attention drifts away from the breath to some thought or idea or daydreaming or fantasy, whatever it may be. And so either I'm remaining focused on something, I'm observing it, and I'm remaining very attentive to it, and sometimes my mind drifts off to think about something and I catch myself and I bring myself back. The frequency with which you leave and come back starts to become much longer, meaning you have less episodes between those peaks where you go off. So the wavelength becomes longer. The frequency is decreasing. So the frequency of these episodes is actually decreasing. And of course, the time spent focusing is going to increase, and the time spent drifting is going to be long at the beginning, but become shorter over time. But if you don't start, if you don't practice, then you remain on the realm of a child with very limited attention skills. Obviously, as an adult, you're going to have better attention, or you should have better attention skills than a child, but you could become a master of your own mind. And becoming a master of your mind is one of the most difficult things. It's very easy to tame a lion or to do some extravagant feat or to develop some big technology, but to tame the mind is probably one of the most difficult things that there are. And so eventually you can sustain your concentration on a singular point for at least 30 minutes uninterrupted. When you can sustain your concentration for around this time point, then you are formally, or you now are doing meditation properly. Otherwise, you are practicing a lower form of meditation, which is likely some variant of dharana or concentration. So oftentimes what people teach out there is more of a body scanning, a stress reduction, a lesser form or a type of practicing concentration that, although it has great benefits, research supports this, a lot of health benefits, and I've talked about that in previous videos. I'll put a link below to my video on traits of successful entrepreneurs or successful individuals and how meditation can help. In that, I go into some details about the benefits of meditation. Definite must watch if you have not watched it. All right, and so this type of meditation eventually graduates to a higher form. You're meditating on your true self, God. Not what you think that is, what God is, what it actually really is, experienced directly without any intermediary. And when you experience that directly, you're able to sustain your concentration on that. You're able to empty and become singular, a singular point. You go from a huge ego, a lot of thoughts, a lot of noise, a lot of attachments, to nothing. You cross the chasm of emptiness, and now you're able to reside and sit. That's what one of the meanings of one of the syllables in Upanishads means. One of the great books in yoga, the Upanishads, is to be able to sit, rest. And not only sit in front of an illumined guru, but sit in your practice, sit openly and empty, and be able to experience yourself without anything in between. That will give you an experience that cannot be described in words, where you will become self-realized and you will experience what your true self is, who you really are, the source of the I thought. That is really what meditation is for, and it is the culmination of the evolutionary process. And it is at that peak, at that pinnacle, where real living begins. Anything prior to that is a fraction of that experience. It's a fraction of that living. Stop trying to fill yourself up with things out there that are evanescent, that will not be around forever, whether it's a loved one, whether it's a job that you love, whether it's money, power, a house, whatever it may be, a large boat, trips that you're taking. It doesn't matter what it is. Ultimately, if you do not achieve the goal of evolution, then you will continue to come back to try to fulfill that. You will continue to take form after form, and research supports this notion that you have taken many forms prior to the one that you hold right now. And once you reach that summit, then everything is open to you. And in the book, The Voyage from Human to God, I describe this voyage. I describe the limbs, and I explain how to engage these, all of these, in a transpersonal developmental way that will lead to the evolution of your consciousness from reduced ego-body consciousness all the way to a more cosmic one, to God consciousness or Krishna consciousness or Christ consciousness, whatever you want to call it. All of those figures from the past embodied that consciousness, God, and therefore they were one with it. They were one in the same. You can experience that like yourself, just like the masters did. I can show you how. I dedicated decades to do this. I was just like you, and you're able to do it yourself. But you must start a process. I don't work with a client and immediately say, oh, let's just start practicing meditation, because that meditation is not going to be productive. We want to actually start them at the right point where they can be. And I think I'm going to do a part 2 of this video series, where I'll explain, I'll go into more details on these earlier limbs. So these are the first 2 limbs of yoga, the yama and the niyamas. These are the ethical components. I describe them in detail, unlike any description that has been out there anywhere in the literature of yoga. Put a lot of effort into it. It was very inspired. A must read, The Voyage from Human to God. And then you focus on what's more close to you, what you're familiar with, which is the body, or asana. And so the key here is not to confuse yoga with asana, which has happened in the West. We've taken asana, the postures, and replaced them with yoga. And now everybody that practices asana says, oh, I just did yoga yesterday. And in fact, they are not practicing yoga. They are just practicing really exercise. Because even the asana has a deeper purpose, which is designed to prepare you for the higher limbs. Eventually, this meditation leads to the last limb, which is samadhi, where you reach that singular point, that state of total emptiness and stillness, where now if you have sustained concentration, immense power and focus, you're able to hold it and you're able to experience yourself as you really are. It is the greatest experience you will ever have. There is nothing that can equal it in the real world. Absolutely nothing. Nothing can replace it, and thereby people go about their lives looking for fake substitutes, these substitutes to fill that void. And that void cannot be filled You must let go of that and embrace the void, embrace emptiness, so that now you can experience yourself exactly as you are. And of course, then I'll describe a little bit in that next video how these are going to be like a little synopsis of what's in the voyage from human to God. How does pranayama fit into preparing you for this? How does withdrawal of the senses, how does withdrawing energy and consciousness from the senses or pratyahara allow you to be able to conquer meditation? And of course, we talked about concentration and meditation, and then I'll give a overall kind of summary in that next video. So watch out for part number 2. It'll be not what is meditation, but how can you get to the point where you actually can conquer and dominate meditation. So how can you actually be fit for meditation? That'll be the subject of the next video. I hope you have a beautiful day. I send you lots of love wherever you may be. I love to serve, teach. Take care. Namaste.